Getting a better sense of what the situation is like there on the streets of Bangkok on this second day of martial law and what lies ahead for the Southeast Asian country.
For that, Paul Quaglia joins us live via Skype from Thailand. Paul is the director at Bangkok-based risk assessment firm PQA Associates.
Paul Quaglia, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, the first question that comes to my mind is that, is this a coup d'etat? I mean, we know that the military has been insisting that it's not, that it's merely restoring peace and order for people from all sides in the country's ongoing political crisis. In your view, what is it?
Well, it's not a coup d'etat, but I would add that it's not a coup d'etat yet. The military had good intentions. Martial law was declared basically to preclude some pretty large demonstrations and strikes that were scheduled for later this week in Bangkok. So the Army initially assessed this as a security problem, not a political problem. The real problem, of course, is what do you do on the day after martial law? And that is a political issue. So the military now, as you pointed out in your report, is gathering together the protest leaders, the stakeholders in the government, and they're trying to work out a closed-door political solution. I have to tell you that's going to be an uphill struggle for the Army. The political differences here are very stark. The rhetoric has been very harsh. And most importantly, the military is well equipped to enforce martial law. They are less skillful at being political mediators. Kanyang?
Well, Paul, it's day 2 of martial law there in Thailand. Help us paint a clearer picture in our heads. Help us paint it clearly by telling us what martial law exactly looks like in Thailand right now.
Well, it looks like hardly anything at all, to be honest with you. I cruised around the city a bit last night on the evening of day 1 of martial law and was hard-pressed to find any soldiers. In the morning yesterday, of course, we all woke up here to see soldiers deployed at key areas of the city, but it was a non-confrontational deployment. And I might add, since Thailand is a country that's had 18 military coups, the presence of military soldiers in the morning is not that surprising. It was very non-confrontational. The Army went out of its way to try and market martial law as non-partisan, as only for security purposes. As the day wore on yesterday, and it was apparent that the protesters were going to behave themselves, the Army withdrew and drew down some of that deployment. So now there's not much to be seen around town unless you go near some of the protest sites where protesters remain. I must say, however, that does not mean that things will remain peaceful over the next couple of weeks. The military is going to have to be very careful to appear nonpartisan and treat each camp equally as it moves forward with these very difficult negotiations.
Right, Paula. So we wonder what's next for Thailand. I mean, what are the Army's intentions? Will we see an all-out election or the appointment of a new government?
That also is a good question. I think what the Army is going to try and do is give half a loaf to each side. I think they're going to have to say, we'll have elections, but we're going to push those elections out a little bit to give a appointed government, or a neutral government, as they call it, time to enact reforms in the interim. I don't know if that's going to be a lasting political solution here, because whenever they have an election, be it 6 months, 3 months, or 1 year, it is very likely that pro-Thaksin political parties, not necessarily enamored of Thaksin the man, but of Thaksin-type politics, are probably going to win that next election, which basically takes us back to where we are right now. An electorally strong rural area, ready to have elections, pitted against a less electorally strong, a upper middle class elite in Bangkok who can't seem to win elections.
Well, from the outside looking in, we're having this vivid imagination of catastrophes and what it could happen in Thailand. But apart from that, apparently it's quite peaceful, just another coup in Thailand over there. But what about the economy? How is it faring amid this political unrest? Is martial law the last straw for Thai investors?
Well, the economy's been battered a fair amount, as you can imagine. Over the long haul, since 2006, we've had protest and political instability in 2008, 2010, and now again 2013, 2014. And so chronic political instability, of course, is something investors have trouble with. They're willing to overlook short-term instability, thinking that the government can get a handle on things and will eventually have an elected government and some sort of stability and policies put into place. That has not happened here. And in fact, the two most important policy initiatives of this government, flood control and national transportation infrastructure, are now in tatters, and that has a direct and negative impact on Thai commercial activity. So I think investors are concerned, both over the short term and the long term, about what's happening here in Thailand.
Well, certainly a situation that we need to keep a close eye on. Paul, many thanks to you for speaking with us. That was Paul Quaglia, Director of PQA Associates, live for us from Bangkok.